I wanna try and take in all the highs, embrace them for more than a moment's time. I want you, please don't move when I push you away. I know I contradict myself some days, but will you ride the lows with me?
Welcome to Mental Health News Radio. I am your host, Kristin Sunanta Walker. Our goal is to help discussions about mental health be a regular part of your daily life, no different than discussions about physical health. Mental illness can be a topic of discussion under the umbrella of mental health, along with so many other topics. This show is the original program on mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com. Our network of shows are played in over 180 countries and cover more topics under that umbrella than you can possibly imagine. We were talking about mental health long before it became cool and popular to talk about, and thank goodness it has become so popular. We have incredible guests, advocates, patients, experts, people. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy our intro music, a song named Lows, written by Aubrey Toon. You can find her music at www.aubreytoone.com.
That night when I started praying, I cried, will you ride the lows with me? Will you ride the lows with me? When I'm down, my vision gets blurry.
Hey everyone, this is Kristin. Welcome to Mental Health News Radio. Have I got a show for you today? No pressure on our guest. We have an attorney, Lindsey Easterling, with us, and oh my goodness, she actually knows what narcissistic abuse is. So I am so excited. She practices in North Carolina. Lindsey, thank you so much for coming on the show.
I'm honored. Thanks for having me.
So all of us that have been through this know what that means. An attorney that understands what it is, because I had it in my head, even with all the shows I've done about this topic and everything. Well, of course, attorneys and judges and, people in the court system know what this is because, we're talking about divorce here and family law. And the answer to that is no, they don't.
That is correct.
When and how did you get to this place where you know what this is and it's part of your law practice?
I feel like people don't get to answer that question until they own their own business sometimes, because if you're a practicing lawyer, you don't necessarily have people asking you that. But I think mine is from childhood. I grew up with a narcissistic parent, and my parents went through a really awful divorce. And as a kid, I just remember saying, I understand this is not good. I understand this is not healthy. But now looking back, I see all of those things as to why, and kind of went on my own journey to figure out, what is narcissism? How does that affect children? How does that affect me as an adult? And then also seeing it over and over. You're so right in saying it's so confusing that professionals in my field, in the divorce field, don't get it because it's so prevalent. And even if it's just like minor narcissistic tendencies or the extremely opposite way, it seems to be a pattern of why marriages don't work. So now I see it every day. It's in my everyday life, and I still kind of have it play out in my personal life too with my parents. But it's been a journey.
I mean, my head is exploding with questions, so I have to calm down and get to a Zen place. Okay. So in working with clients, there's always that thing of, I call it flea and tick syndrome, where the person that is being gaslit, that is dealing with a narcissist, they more than likely have what I call flea and tick syndrome, which is where the narcissist brings out the worst in you too. So you may not be behaving. That's why so many people get diagnosed with these, pretty heavy duty mental illness diagnoses that really aren't accurate, because you've been gaslit into not behaving like you normally would. So how do you decipher when you're working with a client who's the gaslighter, who's the not, that kind of thing? Because that can be quite a rough sea to navigate.
It is. It seems though that people present with more, they're going to be more questioning of themselves if they're not the narcissist. So,
Right.
am I crazy? Is this how this works? He said this or she said this, but I know that I played this role. Like really almost having some sort of self-reflection and
Right.
also some ownership as to how it's working out. I feel like that's not necessarily the end all, but I feel like I see that more in someone that's been gaslit than someone that is the abuser. They're not really doing as much self-reflection or having ownership as to I play a role in this problem or I play a role in this scenario.
And how do you handle an attorney who doesn't know what this is and they are just becoming part of the whole voodoo process that happens when you get involved with a narcissist, meaning their client?
Yeah, it's really, I actually have some lawyers in my area in my divorce law area that I just will not practice with because I feel like they're more emboldening the narcissist and or they're narcissists themselves.
Right.
And I just choose to have a boundary where no matter how much money you pay me as my client, you will not pay me enough to deal with that. And I'll send them to people that I think can handle that. Or some people enjoy that game. It's like literally a
Yeah.
narcissistic game. There are lawyers that are not narcissists that are like, I love this stuff. I love like winning or beating them. And I do not. I would rather like I can advocate all day long. But if I'm getting nasty emails that are just further harassing my client every single day, I have to read it and it hurts me too. And although I'd love to jump in and protect my client, I can't. Someone else has to do that in some of these cases. But there are times where I'm able to work with a rational, healthy attorney that maybe there's some mudslinging, but that's not the whole premise of the entire case. And we're able to come to resolutions or go to court and come to have a resolution from the judge with a narcissist on the other side that doesn't also have a narcissist attorney on the other side.
Yeah, that's hard. I've heard from other attorneys that are colleagues and friends that trial lawyers tend to be on the narcissistic bent a little bit more than not, because they love the showmanship and they love the game and they love that. I'm not saying that as a blanket statement, but yeah. How about dealing with, let's say the attorney that you're dealing with is, reasonable and you can have because people don't understand. I mean, it's not all this mudslinging all the time. You do have when it's just you and the other attorney and you're having your real conversation.
Yeah.
About what's going down, what's up. And that people don't tend to get that that happens. But sometimes it's the attorney is fine, but their staff, like say their paralegal or someone in the office that you, the client, are dealing with is the one who is gaslighting you and telling you the opposite of what your counsel has said. So how have you handled those kinds of situations?
It is definitely a difficult thing to navigate because I feel like, so if I get a client that has been living with a narcissist and is kind of coming out of the clouds and sort of seeing more clearly or still in the clouds and like, I don't know which way is up. I really just need someone to kind of really navigate this for me, tell me what to do, or give me choices that are clear so I can make decisions for my family. But they also do, like you said, it sometimes presents itself in a high anxiety or some other mental health disorder that they don't actually have, but it's more like this is their trauma response. This is their coping mechanism. And I've found people that can handle that. Or if it becomes like that the response that my client is having is really extreme, my staff sends it to me. Like, this is not something that I can handle. You really need to talk to Lindsey. Let me see when I can get you on her calendar. So I think the other hard part is when people are also talking to their family members and they're like, that's not how my divorce went. That's not how this is supposed to go. And explaining like, your case is going to be very different than your family's one because of who you're married to. And two,
Right.
every court system is a little bit different and every case is a little bit different. So making sure that you stay on course with, I don't know, sometimes it might be writing it down, like writing down, my attorney gave me these options. I chose this one and this is why. Because with being gaslit for years and years and years, you sometimes forget and question yourself. Should I have done that? Should I have done this? Should I, like, you're kind of trying to play this chess game, but you forgot why you made all the moves before you made this move that's coming up.
Ooh, good way to put it. Yeah. Yeah. In hindsight, people go, I'm dealing with a family member that's going through a divorce with someone that now even the minister of the church is saying, I think they're a psychopath. And that was the narcissist's biggest champion in the beginning of this whole thing. So it's been fascinating to see people wake up, and I'm like, and from the beginning, like this is what we're dealing with, to the attorney, to the paralegal, to the minister, to whoever. This is what we're dealing with. I'm telling you, this person's going to do this, they're going to do this, they're going to do this, and it was just wasted breath.
Yeah.
No one heard anything I said except that I'm eccentric and I need to stay out of all everything to do with the case. And so I backed away after helping this person find an attorney. And it was just interesting to now watch people get it and go, you could have saved yourself a lot of time if you would have listened to everything I said in the beginning, but I know that's not how it works.
It's a weird game to play when you're with a narcissist, because I have to tell my clients, like, I want you to feel heard by me and I want you to know that I get it. But sometimes waving this flag, like this narcissism, he's a narcissist, she's a narcissist, like everyone should know, doesn't get us to the goal that we want to. So sometimes, but acknowledging that, to say, like, I get it. You are right. This is who this person is. This is how you've been treated. And I'm not saying it's wrong, but sometimes this isn't the argument that will help you get what you need and help your kids get what they need. And sometimes that's hard to process, to realize, like, I want to feel heard and known, and I want my story to be like validated. But in some scenarios, that story isn't going to be helpful for you. Like, you have to process it almost in like two train tracks. Like, I'm processing what I went through separately and apart. It's very intertwined with my legal battle, but I almost have to like separate it sometimes for them to be like, I get it. Like, this can't be our argument. I get that there are so many lies and that he said this, this, and this, or that she promised this, that, and the other. We have to pull apart from it because it's not going to get us to our end goal.
Yeah.
That's sometimes really hard to hear.
Well, it's hard because, yes, after not being heard and not being seen, like you said, it's so important to be validated, but it's also very difficult to, there's so much to be said to people about no contact being such a good thing. And sometimes you can't go no contact if there are children involved as the biggest example, but low contact to no contact, because that, you're right, that person needs to drop those fleas and ticks that have landed on them from being around someone that has been gaslighting them for however long. And the only way to really heal from that is to be away from it so that you're not in constant fight or flight. And talk about a situation that just is all about fight or flight. Let's go to an attorney and start divorce proceedings.
Right. That in and of itself is like a whole nother trauma. Like, meeting me is like a trauma. So it's a very interesting job choice I've chosen. But yeah, it is helping clients. I feel like it's important to help clients realize that they're in that fight or flight. Realize that when the phone rings, when the email comes, whether it's from me or from the abuser, like, how does your body react? How can you have control of that? You can have control of when you look at that. You can have control of when it notifies you. You can mute the conversation and choose to only look at them at the end of the day, only look at them at the beginning of the day. Like, there can be some boundaries you can set up for yourself to protect your mental health. because if someone has unfettered access to you, it can wreck your entire day. And most of the stuff they say is bull crap anyway. Like, it doesn't.
Exactly. That's what's fascinating. I mean, I immediately went into shutdown mode. Okay, all emails go to spam and then I move them manually to another folder to save them. All text messages get saved and then deleted. No incoming from anywhere, because I knew my family member needed to, just have space, and time to process what just hit them, and that's really hard because you're right. Your own attorney, anything from your own attorney, you're like, because it's related to this traumatic event that's happening.
Some of the ways that I've protected clients through that part is, in most cases, I get a letter from the other attorney, or maybe the other person's the narcissist is not represented, or sorry, wouldn't be the narcissist. I do things differently for them. But if I get an email, I just forward it to my client. It's easier and faster, and things get done more productively. But if these emails or these letters and correspondence from the other attorney or from the narcissist are laden with more abuse or more underhanded comments, and I can tell just by reading them, they're going to be triggering. I tell my client, I received a letter. I'm not going to send it to you because it won't be helpful. I'm going to tell you in my words what it says so that you don't have to read it. And sometimes they'll be like, I just want to know. I want to know what they said. And I'm like, you've asked, do you have a therapy appointment in the next week? I will send it to you. Like, this is not going to be helpful. But it is interesting to have learned that in my process, like, oh, I'm contributing to this triggering of my client. How can I stop that? I'll just summarize versus do what's easiest and quicker, because it's not helpful.
I know there are stages that you see people go through. Probably the first stage is just complete shock. Like, someone walks in and you can tell that they are just laden with PTSD because of their face, everything about them says this person is in active trauma right now. I know that's a stage, but for many people, there's a stage of their own anger and then them wanting to get back at the narcissist doing these things to them, which doesn't help the legal process either. So how do you navigate those waters?
I think some of the things that I'll say at a consultation, if my clients have ever consulted with me, they know I say that there's two types of people that come in my office. Someone that's been processing this for years or months and they're done, like they're finished. And whether that's like, I'm so laden with PTSD, I am done, or it's someone that it's a complete surprise and maybe the narcissist had an affair or maybe the narcissist did something else and like they're feeling blindsided. So those are usually the two categories that I have. Someone that's so done, like they can barely walk any further in this marriage, or someone that's like, I didn't even realize this was done. So there's those two types of people that I kind of have to process. And then I also tell them, I'm not a therapist, but they should look up the grief cycle. And it seems to be intertwined with the end of a marriage, whether it's with a narcissist or not. But this like anger and like bargaining and all of these different cycles are things that they probably go through on a daily basis with a narcissist, but it's even more pronounced when we're done, when we're really undoing the marriage, and understanding that is normal to have that, but that they're hiring me to kind of be their guide to say, I hear you are angry. I get that. That's a rational feeling to feel, but that won't help us. Right. I hear that you're bargaining to try to either reconcile or whatever. I hear you. If that is what you want, I'll support you, but that's not what you hired me to do. And you told me to kind of push you a little bit and kind of keep you on track. So I think it's just giving them tools or words or resources, because I think some of it is, it's all happening to them, but they're not even having time to process it. So if they have time to sit down and look at, oh, this is how the grief cycle works. All these feelings are normal. I'm grieving. Right. All these feelings are normal. I was married to a narcissist. So words and education, I think, is also helpful.
Yeah, it's and that is 100% the truth, because I mean, so many people listen to shows like this, like other episodes I've done, other podcasters on my network, people will write all the time saying, sometimes I just listen to the same shows again and again and again and again and again. Like I listen to them in order to be able to go to sleep.
Oh, yeah.
Because you just need to rewire that brain. And that's a good thing to do that. It's not good to stay in that forever. Like you've been divorced 5 years now and you're still, listening to shows at a rapid pace. Get a different counselor or go to because that's not healthy to keep in it. It's not healthy for your psyche. But you telling people, giving them language, and because that's what you're looking for. Your world was upended all the time being married to this person, and it's upended again, in the divorce, but peace can come. It can come. And a lot of times, not every time, because believe me, I have friends that, they've spent $500,000 on their defense and their ex is still finding reasons to sue them and all this craziness going on. So there are those cases, but more often than not, what I hear from survivors of this is it was just all this blowhard stuff that, and then they ended up just sort of, it was a whimper, not a bang at the end.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm like, they just need a new source. We need a new person in their life that they can be focused on. And sometimes that does help. That's not the end all. But a lot of times I have to tell clients, be prepared for this to not be over for a very long time.
Right.
Because the justice system is not justice, and it can definitely be used as an additional form of abuse, especially by narcissists. There's always something to modify. There's always something to complain about. There's always something that doesn't work or someone doesn't follow it to the letter of the law, the orders to the letter of the law. So there's definitely, I can't tell anyone like it's over. A lot of times I have clients for years and it's not their choice. I would love for them to only see them at the grocery store and not be my client anymore, but that's not how it works out in a lot of these cases.
I know if they had an affair or many affairs, then at some point, you're so angry and hurt and betrayed. And then at some point through this process, you're like, please find the affair that's going to stick.
Yes.
Focus and I feel sorry for this new person, but my God, find your new candy. Yes. I don't want to be your brand of heroin anymore.
Yes.
For emotional supply. There's
ebb and flow with that where my clients will be like, oh, they must have broke up. We're getting a call. Like it must be, their relationship must be on the rocks because now I'm getting sucked back in. So I think the awareness of that, even just them being able to recognize that that's the pattern is healthy. It doesn't mean it doesn't stink. It's not, it still is a frustrating process, but it's easier to recognize what's going on.
Yeah, you do learn how to handle lesser traumas, even though they're still a trauma. You're like, well, it's not as bad as what I dealt with last week, so it's a good day.
Yes. Yeah.
How about, because the cycles of narcissistic abuse, the discard, the devalue, discard, all of that. Many of them suddenly don't want a divorce and try to woo that person back. And there are multiple reasons why they do this, but I've heard of many, and I dealt with this in my own family, just horrible, the most awful things being done. And then, I want to reconcile as soon as court dates are coming up. I want to reconcile. And if you don't reconcile with me, I have a terminal disease now, and I'm going to cause self-harm if you don't reconcile. How do you deal with those situations? Because most of the time they don't do anything. It's just a ploy.
Yes. I think that I tell people that I'm not a psychic. I don't predict the future, but because the patterns are similar, when I tell them at the onset that this might happen and then it does, it's kind of like oh, you said he would do that, or you said she would do that. I'm like, yes, because this is how it works. Look it up and how it works. Figure out what you actually want. Talk to some trusted people and say, what do I want? Do I want this marriage to be over or do I not? What are my most important values in this process if I'm getting divorced? Is it money? Is it my children? Is like what is going to be the most important things for me? What is my end all? And if I don't know, we had someone not too long ago in our for one of our cases that it was like, reconcile with me or settle for this, and then we can just be done and I'll never be in the kids' lives. And that was devastating for her to hear. Right. I was kind of like, wouldn't that be great also? Like,
Yeah.
Anyway, you get to choose now. That doesn't mean he has to be gone forever. You get to choose if he gets to come back in, but now you're kind of protected. And I think it was a hard pill to swallow, but some of the threats are helpful. They're like, let's jump on that right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Where they're at, let's get this thing signed. That sounds really awful long-term, but at least now you have some power if we get this signed.
Yeah, getting it signed is an interesting thing. And boy, do they not want to sign a damn thing.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Unless they feel like they've won.
Yeah, exactly. Unless they feel like they've won something, they don't want to sign anything. Even if, a judge signs off, this is happening, you will do this. Even then, sometimes they don't do what they've been told to do.
Yes. Telling my clients, like, okay, I need you, like, you had to learn the rules of the road. You've had to learn the rules of your job. I need you to look at your order and your agreement, and I need you to know it like the back of your hand, because that is now the boundary that has been created. So if he's not going to do it or she's not going to do it because this is who they are, they're a narcissist and they're not going to listen to rules, you need to know what those are. And every inch that you give, they're going to take a mile.
Yeah.
And every inch that you give, because you hope it will be reciprocated, it will not be. It will not be reciprocated. So unless you're fine doing this modification or giving them this little thing that they aren't supposed to get and getting absolutely nothing in return, maybe even getting a mean text in return, then don't do it. Follow the rules, follow the order or the agreement to the T. And you're not being a jerk. This is the rules. You've created the rules. Everybody agreed to the rules. So it's hard sometimes to process, like, but it just makes sense. Like, this is just the right thing to do. It's easier for them to have the kids an extra day on this day, or it's easier for them to pay me 4 days late. It's fine. But it becomes further abuse.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I always say, look, you feel like you're giving them a grain of sand. But let me tell you how precious that grain of sand is. That grain of sand is $10 million. That grain of sand is your life, because they're going to take that grain of sand, and that grain of sand is going to stretch all the way from Maine to the tip of Florida.
Yeah.
So just don't do it. Don't do it. Listen to your own, you're a nice person. You're kind. You're caring. You're too naive.
Yeah.
You want to live in magical fairyland, which is why the narcissist was appealing in the first place. And then you realize, oh my God, I'm living in a nightmare. Don't use, that's the biggest thing that they can get over on anyone, is your niceness, your compassion, your morals. And they know it.
Yeah.
And they're going to use all of those wonderful things about you as a weapon to hold things over you. So you have to hold back on your own moralistic, well, but I would be at the hospital. I'm still legally their spouse. They say that they're ill. I'm required to be there to help them through this time. And I'm like, no, you're not.
Nope. There's no law that says that anywhere. Nope. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about North Carolina law, because it's a little different in terms of you can't file for divorce until you've been separated for a year.
Yeah.
Which poses all kinds of fascinating challenges.
Yes. The positive that I think gets confusing for people is that doesn't mean we can't settle everything until that year is over or until we hit that year. So a lot of my cases, I don't know, it seems like I have people that are married to narcissists and they come to me for like strategy sessions before they're even ready to break the news that it's over. So we're like strategizing and planning and talking, and here's my top 10 things that I need. Here's the things that I could leave without, like, I'll be fine if I don't have those things. We come up with some proposals. We go back and forth. They're still living together this entire time. We're gathering documents. We're doing all of these different planning things secretively most of the time. And then we make some proposals. And whether that means I'm going to make a proposal and I'm moving out on that same very day, because that's what's going to be best for my mental health.
Right.
Or I'm going to stay in the house because this is more, I don't know, there's more incentive to make a settlement when you're living in misery. Right. Everybody wants out of the house. Everybody wants this to be over. So sometimes it's best to not leave until we have an agreement. But you can settle all of your financials, all of your custody and child support things, alimony, all of those things can be settled before you even leave. You can sign a contract. You just have to be out 30 days after you sign a contract, agreeing to those things. That is definitely harder with a narcissist to get them to agree, like you said. But I've had it happen.
Yeah, sometimes, sometimes it does. Miracles do happen, people.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yes. And especially if you do the strategy the right way. Like I feel like I said earlier, if they feel like they've won. So you have to figure out and strategize, like, they make you think you don't know anything, but you actually know so much. You know what their triggers are. You know what their desires are. You know what their fears are. Like you've almost studied them ad nauseum because that's how you survive. So if you know all that information, you can figure out what would make them feel okay. It's not an exact science.
I think sometimes in watching this, I mean, I've been through it myself, not the divorce part, but the being in business relationships, especially with narcissists. Oh my God. I have my own business and will never, ever bring in a partner ever again. But what's interesting is in the married part is, you have a full dossier on what makes this particular person tick. They have one on you.
Yes.
But you are so invested in being the good one and they're the bad one that you won't utilize your dossier in order to help yourself. And that's part of a thing where I have to tell someone, okay, what do we got to do to move past this thing you're hanging on to, which is really about your ego?
Yeah.
I'm not saying go be an awful person. However, I need to know, what are their triggers? What bothers them? Do they absolutely get enraged if they're confronted in public? Are they afraid of this? Are they afraid of that? Like, I don't want to say that. Oh, that would just be cruel. And I'm like, they're doing it to you.
So, like, I'm not asking you to be a bad person or to go against your morals. What I'm asking you to do is end this faster and also realize they're going to make you look like a jerk no matter what you do. You could send them flowers every day and send only nice text messages and never lose your cool one time, and they're still going to try to paint you as a bad guy. You're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. Like, so why not use what helps you?
Yeah, I mean, my strategy in business dealing with these kind of people has been, and I can't say this is a good one because it certainly was painful. I think no matter what, like no one gets out unscathed when you're in this kind of a relationship.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't have mattered what I did, but what a direction I went was, I have nothing to lose because I'm not living in a house of cards. You have everything to lose because you are. So my strategy was, I'm going to be your worst nightmare. I'm not going to let this go. I'm going to talk about it on podcasts. I'm going to, not to the point of getting sued, but all these things, and to where they go, okay, that's a badger that even a narcissist goes, I don't want to revisit that. And I got okay with them saying she's crazy, she's evil, she's blah, blah, blah. Go ahead, because they were saying it anyway.
Right.
So what does it matter? And like I said, I can't say that strategy was the best strategy. It's just what I did to survive. And I certainly took a toll on me and who am I, and all of these things. And at the end, but it's all been helpful. That's the thing too. I try to convey to people, all of it is helpful. Every single one of them that I have dealt with in my entire life prepared me for dealing with the worst one, which is married to someone in my family who they were literally trying to kill They were literally trying to take all their rights away to get access to all their money, like the worst case scenario you can imagine with a narcissist. I'm a supporting family member in it. And it took everything I've ever been through to be able to sit back and go, okay, now we're talking about someone's life here, not their business, their actual life. I need to really make sure that my tools are in order. You know what I mean?
I think the other thing to know is that if you have to use that strategy, the one that feels so counterintuitive to who you are, or your morals or whatever, that's not the strategy that you have to use the entire time. It's kind of you just have to switch it on and off and move and zig and zag. Like your processes change, and you sort of have to reevaluate, sometimes daily, sometimes
hourly.
Yeah. So I think that to know that you don't have to live in that feeling the whole time, it just might be a one, like, here's our one thing that we're going to do in this moment that doesn't feel like who I am. And then it's over, and then we'll move on, and then we'll keep doing different things depending on what we're faced with in this moment. I think that having the support to know that that's not forever, that's not now who you are, that's not how you have to operate with everyone, that doesn't define you. That's just a moment and how you have to act in that moment.
My last question for you is how do we, I mean, in the United States, coercive control is not illegal. It is finally in the UK. And many of my friends and colleagues in the UK have done many shows about this, but it isn't in the United States. And coercive control, it's like people that tell me, I had some woman say, well, I'm going to go date this guy that I met in the grocery store who was doing this and this and this and this. And she wanted my opinion. And I said, he sounds like a sociopath. Don't do it. Mm-hmm. But he was so nice and he was so charming. And he told me this and he told me that. And the guy was already pulling coercive control with someone that he just met. And I said, honey, Ted Bundy was extremely charming and attractive and has a girlfriend that he was going to marry who still to this day thinks he's the greatest thing ever. So I know you don't want to live in this negative, quote unquote, negative place where these kind of people exist, but the reality is they do. You don't have to be so afraid that you're going to bump into one every time you go to the grocery store, but you are a target because you just lay yourself out there to be charmed by these kind of people. So anyway, a two-parter, the coercive control part, and then, kind of warning people for the future.
I'm going to answer the second one first, the warning people. I've definitely had a scenario where I worked with this person throughout their divorce process. It was difficult. It was definitely with a narcissist. And then shortly thereafter, she fell in love. She's like, I think I'm going to move in with this person. And the North Carolina law is if you move in with someone, you lose your alimony. If you're cohabitating or you remarry, you don't have it anymore. And I'm like, you're giving up a lot for this person that you don't know that well yet. And I just want you to be fully eyes wide open. I'm never going to say I told you so, because that's not helpful for you. But I just want you to be eyes wide open with this, that you're jumping from potentially one to another of a very similar type of personality. So just be aware of that. And we worked it through. She put some boundaries in place. He put all of the money that she would have made in alimony in a bank account in her name alone. I was like, well, I guess you're not really losing an alimony. This other person is paying you. So just interesting ways to kind of protect herself. And she's like, I'm going in eyes wide open. If it's bad, it's bad. I'll leave and I'll be okay. But it's definitely a pattern that I think if people, when they're ending this relationship, don't go into therapy to see how they played a role in it, like you said, the kind people, the empaths, the people that see the best in people, how can you still be that person in your core, but not get sucked into another one? They're not going to all look the same at the beginning. The next one's going to look much better. Oh, he's nothing like the other one. Nothing. Oh my gosh, totally different. But like, maybe not. How can you feed through that? The only way you can do that is so much self-reflection and boundaries and kind of awareness of what to be looking for.
Reality is you can be an empath and be a badass too.
Oh my gosh. Yes. 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 And it's a really fun life to be that, because
Oh, yes,
people
it is.
love you and you love them so deeply and you know them so well, but you are protected.
And you're boundaried, and then, oh my gosh, all of a sudden you aren't attracting every narcissist on the planet that finds you the yummiest toy to mess with. Suddenly the people that walk into your life are all badasses too, and also empaths.
Yes, and you can build people up, because that's, I think, what these empaths, us as empaths, I feel like I am one too, want to build people up. And that's why, like when you have a narcissist, you see their potential, you see who they could be.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes.
And you're like, oh my gosh, in their core, they're good. I know it. I've seen it. They've shown it to me. But that's not our job. But when you are an empath and a badass, you get to be with people that also want to grow, that they see that there are things where they can change, and you get to grow with them and like empower them. It's so great. It's such a good space to be. You don't have to not be an empath. You just have to be an aware empath.
Exactly.
But
so the last one about coercive control.
Yeah, it's really disheartening how the court process works. Even I've been working with other experts in North Carolina, guardian ad litem, child therapists, parent coordinators, and some of them just don't get it.
Yeah.
And I think explaining it to them, I've had one that came back to me and she's like, I really thought your client was crazy. Like I really did. I thought she was crazy. And now that this whole process is over, I see who she really is. And I've tried to explain, I'm like, your processes are wrong.
Yeah.
Professional, outside professional. You like to have them together. It saves time. Everybody gets to hear what the other person has to say. So we're having joint calls with everyone. And like my client is triggered the moment, like an hour before the call is even happening, she's triggered.
Right.
So how can you change your processes so that that doesn't happen again? Now you see who my client really was, but you never got to see that because of the way you have it set up. It doesn't work. So if it's a high conflict case, assume it's a narcissist and assume they shouldn't meet together. So I think educating, it feels like we're like chipping away at a glacier. I'm encouraged to hear that it's different in the UK. So it feels like maybe it will trickle down. There's definitely huge, huge areas of professionals that do get it. I'm surely not perfect. There are times that I get frustrated and I'm like, why are you acting like that? But I'm like, you have trauma. And sometimes I don't have the patience for it. Or sometimes like I'm a human, but at the same time, I'm always able to come back and be like, okay, I get it. This is what's happening. This is what they're going through. Or I'm not being charmed by a narcissist, those types of things. But if you don't even know how it works, you can't have that self-reflection and kind of look back at what you're doing. So I think we're chipping away.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm going to interview, I've interviewed every counselor, not every, but many, many, many counselors over 10 years about this subject, meaning mental health counselors and neurologists and so on. And now I really want to interview attorneys that know this. You're my first one. Well, I have a couple on the network that I've talked to as well, but not in depth like this. And yeah, that big piece, even an attorney, like had a situation where it was, okay, this person is a hoarder. It took a biohazard team to clean up their stuff because they wouldn't clean it and get out of the house of the victim of this person, and all their stuff was put outside. And my relative's attorney said, oh, they'll never be able to. I mean, it was a massive junk, just filthy junk. And yes, hoarding is a mental illness. However, this was done because it was causing illness to my relative on purpose. And what was interesting was watching, this person's own attorney say, oh, well, let's give them an extra 30 days to clean up that stuff outside. It'll never, they'll just never be able to do it in 30 days. And I'm looking at them like, do you realize what you're asking?
Mm-hmm.
Like, first of all, they can hire a crew to come clean it up just like we did. And second of all, you're asking this person to go through another 30 days of trauma where this person can show up whenever the hell they want.
Yep.
And be absolutely horrid the whole time that they're there. So that's the kind of stuff where I go, awareness is key,
Yes. And then having someone that can advocate for you. I think the only thing I really want to end with is if you are a person that is living with a narcissist and you're going to hire an attorney, understand who you're drawn to. Understand that you're drawn to people like your spouse, that they sound great. So if someone's going to promise you the sun, moon, and stars, and they're going to fight for you, and they're going to this, that, and the other, like that also might be narcissistic.
Yeah.
If they're not real with you and say, these are the pros and cons of your case, or here's what we can do, and here's how this will work, and they're being real with you and not
glib,
gaslighting or love bombing. And that's not like what a lawyer would do, but kind of in those types of.
Oh no, there are lawyers that will say, "I'll just burn all their stuff. We got this in the bag. They've abandoned you." And then 2 months later, the paralegal saying, "You shouldn't have done anything. Who told you to do that?" So there are attorneys that are just as bad as your ex.
I think that meeting with at least two, I know that for a lot of people, that's a financial burden because my consultation is $300. So if you meet with me and someone else, that's at least $600. Yeah. So I know that that's a huge thing, but if you don't invest in it at the beginning, then you're not stuck. You can always fire your lawyer and hire someone else, but it's more costly because now the new attorney has to catch up. So I think knowing that it feels like an emergency at the very beginning. It feels like I have to meet with someone in this very, very moment today, this afternoon. I have to slow down a minute, meet with at least two, and then kind of do a pros and cons list. Like I felt connected to this person. I felt like this person would advocate for me. I felt like this person heard me. I feel like that's so important because the person you hire is going to set the stage for the process. And it's a long road with a narcissist, and you need someone that's going to support you and advocate for you, but also not create more trauma.
Right. Oh, well, obviously we could go on, and I know you have work to do, as do I. So Lindsey Easterling, thank you so much for not only agreeing to do the show and doing what you do, because being an attorney is hard enough without adding this component to it. Just the fact that you called and were so excited about this, and that you champion, being an attorney, knowing about this kind of abuse. I mean, that is a rarity. So thank you for all of those things.
Yes. Thank you, Kristin, for having me. I'm honored to work with so many people that have went through this process. And it's a hard road, like you said, but one of the joys I get is seeing someone that is so burdened when they come to me the very first time I meet them. And then when the process is over or mostly over, seeing that they walk out different and seeing that they're new and on the road to healing and free. It's a joy, and it's why I do what I do. It is hard work, but it is totally worth it. So I'm thankful for what you do and for letting me join you on this podcast. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. And listeners, I want to make sure you know where you can find Lindsey. Just remember that she is an attorney that practices in North Carolina. Easterling Family Law, Easter like Easter egg, easterlingfamilylaw.com. And you can find that on, all of social media, where you can get information about their practice and what they do. And that, yes, lawyers like this do exist, because we just talked to one. So again, Lindsey, thank you so much.
Right. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of the day.
But will you ride the low, low, lows with me? Will you ride the low, low, lows with me?
One thing you can always count on at Mental Health News Radio Network and my show is that there will always be dogs around. Why? They are natural healers, excellent for your mental health. The original therapy dog Miles has something to say in just a moment. For now, please check out all of our amazing shows at mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com and all your favorite podcast apps. Until next time, I'm Kristin Sananta-Walker, and thank you for listening.
And I can ride the low, low, lows with me. I can ride the low, low, lows with me. Till my vision clears up perfectly. I can ride the low, low, lows with me.
Good boy. All right, Lindsey, that was awesome.